Hey, it's Carolyn from Kira Studios with a video about measuring proportions, in particular how to measure in increments. I'll talk about which increments you absolutely shouldn't miss and when to measure for them. And I'll also let you know which ones are overkill and not so important. Throughout the video, you'll also see me use other measuring tools that I covered in the previous two videos. So if you're curious about catching up, I will put the links in the description below. Now let's remember that the purpose of measuring is to avoid that we run off the page and that our drawing results into in the scale that we had in mind for it. So we don't want to feel like we're at the mercy of our drawing, but that we're in control. So we want to make sure that we use our tools to our benefit and that we don't let them drive us into the weeds. Remember, they're there to help us. So let's dive in. The first thing I will do is I establish where my outermost points in the setup. My furthest left, my furthest right, my topmost and bottommost marks. And I literally make little marks on the page for those areas. It helps me clarify where the boundaries are. And once I have these marks, then I take my first increment, and that is the narrower size. In this case, it's the width. How many times does it fit into the larger size? In this case, it's the height. So here I measured that my widest point from the left antler to the right flower, that fits, I think it was 2 times and a third. Now listen, when you're measuring an increment, physically you have to make sure that you close one eye, that you lock your elbow, and that your hand is steady. So here's the clip again of me taking the measurement. I stick out my arm, lock my elbow, close one eye, align the needle on the left with the antler and my thumbnail with the flower on the right. Now I don't move my thumb anymore, but I flip the knitting needle upright. Then I move my hand so low until my thumbnail aligns with the lowest point. I pay attention to where the top of the needle is, place my hand there, and continue until I'm outside of the height of the drawing. So, and then I check it on my drawing. So in real life, I got 2 and a third. So on my drawing, I double check, did I get that? And if not, I make an adjustment. So in this case, I nudged it out to the right a little bit to extend that width. So now I'm checking. I'm at 2 times. Now I am at 2 and about a third. So here's what I don't do when I measure an increment. I don't take my visual measurement and then try and transfer that onto the page by locking my arm and carrying that increment over to the page. Instead, I remember what I measured and then I check my guesstimation on the page if it holds true to my measurement. So I'll show you with the next measurement. So here I'm taking now a constant. I pick an object and see how many times it fits into the height, for example. So in this case, I picked the vase and saw how many times it fits into the entire height of the drawing. So now I'm checking the guesstimation of my vase drawing. Right now it fits 2 times, 3 times, 3 times and a little bit, but I measured that it was 3.5 times. So now I'm adjusting my vase guesstimation down. So I'm trying on what happens if I draw it slightly smaller. So here I'm at 3, 3.5. So now I know that this is a better scale for that little white vase. So I'll say it again. I'm not transferring the visual measurement by locking my elbow onto the page. Instead, I check what I drew against what I measured. I'll show you with one more slightly smaller increment. So here I'm checking, how does the antler height relate to the cranium height? So I'm finding out that the antlers fit 1.5 times roundabout, a little bit less than that, into the entire skull. So in my drawing, I had that back of the cranium too low, and so I'm nudging it up higher to meet those measurements a little bit better. Now, the thing I will tell you about measuring increments is that you want to do this fairly early on in the beginning, only with the biggest height to width relationships, your constant, and then maybe like the overall width to height of an individual item like I just did with the skull. The thing you do not want to do is drive yourself crazy with trying to measure these really small increments. Like if I wanted to measure how many times the flower fits into the height of the drawing, that would drive me nuts because my hand would be wobbling. I would make mistakes measuring, and it's just not a good use of my time. But it is an excellent use of my time to go for my biggest relationships, that overall width to the overall height. And once I measured this, then I just have to commit to not going beyond my established parameters. And that might be the hardest thing, but remember, this is why you measured, so you don't have to do it later again down the road. And like this, you are in control of your drawing, not your tools, and that's the way we want it. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you next time.